The concept of building a company to me is the most exhilarating, adrenaline rush, motivating thing in my life. And having the opportunity to do that dozens of times a year, I don't think I could get any luckier.
This is The Entrepreneur Way with Neil Ball. Unlocking the secrets of successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball. Napoleon Hill said the power of the mastermind is the driving force. To discover how you can unlock the potential in your business using the power of a mastermind, go to mastermindunlimited.com. And now, here is your host, Neil Ball.
Hello, it's Neil Ball here. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Entrepreneur Way. The Entrepreneur Way is about the entrepreneur's journey, the vision, the mindset, the commitment, the sacrifice, failures and successes. I am so excited to bring you our special guest today, Joshua Davidson. But before I introduce you to him, I have a little bit of a quote for you. Salcott Parsons said, "Theory not only formulates what we know, but also tells us what we want to know. That is, to the questions to which the answer is needed." The Entrepreneur Way asks the questions so we all get the insight, inspiration and ideas to apply in our businesses. Joshua, welcome to the show. Are you ready to share your version of the Entrepreneur Way with us?
Let's do this, Neil.
Okay, welcome to the show. Joshua Davidson builds products and grows companies. He's the founder of ChopDawg, that's with CH at the beginning, and he is the co-host of the Pawdcast. He's been featured on Fox, MSNBC, CBS, Technically, and Mashable. Joshua, can you provide us with some more insight into your business and personal life to allow us to get to know more about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, of course. So pretty much, if people ask me to define my day, I spend 80% of my day staring at a screen, talking with Apple headphones on, just like this. So that's pretty much a stereotypical day for me. But the real, probably more in-depth look is I help entrepreneurs around the world with great technical ideas but lack the technical resources, help turn them into reality. We basically at ChopDawg help build their brands, build their products, primarily in the digital sphere. So if you look through our portfolio clients, you'll find iPhone apps, Android apps, web apps, software, wearable, websites. So we primarily work with non-technical entrepreneurs, but with these amazing technical ideas, which otherwise they pretty much have no options on how to bring their ideas to market. They can go to a development firm here in the United States or over in Europe, but the issue is for most of them, they pretty much charge a second mortgage, right? Which most individuals can't afford. Mm-hmm. And if somehow you can afford a second mortgage, the issue is you're not getting someone to help focus on building you a company. They're just trying to make you as happy as quick as possible, giving you that quickest turnaround, that quickest turnover. And what happens is you end up with this very expensive toy that you're going to fail with. And vice versa, for those who can't afford second mortgages, they look we call here going overseas, but pretty much what most people know as outsourcing over to countries such as Uganda, Ukraine, Russia, China, Pakistan. And I probably don't have to explain the M. Night Shyamalan plots that happens when working with overseas outsourced firms where you pay pennies on the dollars, right? Mm-hmm. We all have heard those nightmare stories time and time again. And we realized, pardon my French here, but holy shit, there's this amazing opportunity and this huge problem that people need solved. And for every technical individual with a great technical idea, there's 10 non-technical individuals. And everyone's always focused on the technical individual, but they're neglecting the serial entrepreneurs, the lawyers, the investors, the people who have been around the block and know how technology can solve problems. It's just they don't have the capabilities of doing it themselves, only the idea. Mm-hmm. And we've been running ChopDawg for almost 7 years now. August will mark our 7th anniversary. And we've launched over 160 companies to date worldwide. In fact, we literally just launched this week a client in Bangkok, Thailand, for perspective. Even though we're based here in the United States, we have clients everywhere, even throughout Europe and London, Spain, here in the States, and Mexico and Canada. Odds are if you look somewhere on the map, you're going to probably find somewhere where one of our clients is from. And yeah, that's kind of pretty much in the nutshell. And then on the side, as you mentioned, we at ChopDawg are all about also inspiring people to become entrepreneurs, motivating them. Mm-hmm. And we do multiple things. We update our blog almost daily. It's not exactly daily. We have a very, very active social media channel. We introduced the Pawdcast this past year where we kind of deconstruct amazing individuals, not necessarily entrepreneurs, but just amazing individuals that people can learn a lot from, and trying to help as well motivate and be a resource for inspiring and active entrepreneurs too.
Mm-hmm. Could you just talk a little bit more? You talked about ChopDawg and the way you help these entrepreneurs. So how do you do that? Do you invest in their business, or do you take an equity stake in it? What happens? How do you actually help them?
Majority of our clients are compensation based only. Yeah. So so number one, we don't bill by hour, by week, by month. One of the reasons why is I hate that model. Mm-hmm. I think it incentivizes companies like us or attorneys or anyone's service to take as long as possible. And two, if you ask me how many hours it's going to take to build your company, I'd be lying to you if I give you an answer. The amount of back and forth, the planning, the high fidelities, the wireframing, the product development, the testing, it's very subjective, right? And every client has a different personality. So we actually bill by set rate for exactly what it is you're trying to get done. Mm-hmm. So theoretically, let's say you were a $200,000 project or a 200,000 pound project or 150,000 euro project or whatever your currency is. That's exactly what you're looking at. You're not looking at a penny more. You're not being guessed. You know exactly what it is. And we're a big believer in that. More transparency. Our clients can better manage the cash flow. You know, a lot of our individuals that we work with are individuals, right? They don't have $1 million budgets, £1 million budgets, €1 million budgets. Mm-hmm. They need to be able to spend to a T. They need to know what they're allocating. So our business model is set up to be fully transparent, and so they know exactly what they're getting into. But we do on occasion take equity. And I guess you could consider it investing, but we don't physically invest. For example, this is a real example. Let's say you came to me with a brilliant idea. All right, Neil, and it was for an iPhone app. And I quoted you at $75,000, but you only had a $50,000 budget. There's a $25,000 difference in this scenario. Sometimes we'll turn around to an entrepreneur and be like, to he or she, we really like you. We really like the idea. We think this has potential. That $25,000 difference, we'll take that as equity, so you don't have to raise additional funds and you don't have to worry about not being able to proceed forward, and we'll work together. Mm-hmm. So we do, in situations such as that, take ownership or profit sharing or equity or whatever the situation we feel might be worth it. Mm-hmm. But most of our clientele are paying us through currency, through compensation.
Okay. And what do you enjoy most about what you do?
So it's actually two answers I'm going to give you here. Okay. One is, I'm known since I was very young. I love building stuff. And the concept of building a company to me is the most exhilarating, adrenaline rush, motivating thing in my life. And having the opportunity to do that dozens of times a year, I don't think I could get any luckier. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start a company such as this, is because I get to do what to me is the most fun part about being an entrepreneur day in and day out. And I'm privileged that I have that opportunity with my amazing team to do that with such incredible clients. And then vice versa, I really, 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 really do love helping people. Part of it's kind of the fundamentals my parents fortunately raised into me, part of just my DNA, and having the ability to turn people's ideas into reality is, again, it goes hand in hand. It's the most exhilarating, humbling experience you could ever have. And it's part of our company's DNA. It's why we produce so much extra content in our blog, with the podcast and social media, because we feel we have a social mission to help people with entrepreneurial tendencies become entrepreneurs. With people inspiring to become entrepreneurs, get a playbook on how to be a successful entrepreneur, on how to fail less, and teach them lessons. And then for our clients, do everything possible to help them make their idea come to life and to see them succeed, and do everything we can to see them become successful. So it's really twofold to answer there, but they're not mutually exclusive. You know, they kind of go hand in hand with why I absolutely love what we get to do every day.
Mm-hmm. And what is it that drives you?
This is a really good question. So, you know, I can give you both a selfish reason and then more maybe an exoskeleton layer of it. Okay. So selfish first is really legacy. I guess I grew up in that Steve Jobs era where, we were here to put a ding in the universe, right? Otherwise, why we're here type mentality. Mm-hmm. But it's true. You know, I just look at life as, it's a finite resource. We're eventually going to run out of it. And I don't want to look back when I'm old and regret what I've done. And I truly do believe we're in the modern day gold rush, the modern day revolution. where for the first time ever, you can create something and 1 billion people can use it day one. We've never had that in history of mankind, right? And it's the Wild West years where, there is regulation now, but it's so limited to what it will become. And the ideas, there's such good ideas out there right now happening every day. No one's ran out of ideas. Patent trolls are having a tough time. Like, this is the greatest time in history to be an entrepreneur if you're in the tech and you're in the digital sphere. And, legacy. I want to be able to look back upon myself or other people and look at me and say, you helped pioneer some of the greatest companies, products, and things that people use in the modern era and modern society, or change the way how we do things. So that's more of a selfish reason, but I never look at selfishness as a negative when it comes to things such as that. And then the more exo layers we're talking about it's again helping people, because it kind of goes probably, and again, not me too exclusive to legacy. If I have the opportunity to help right now 160 entrepreneurs bring their products to life, and maybe my life help a couple thousands, or help inspire a couple thousand to become entrepreneurs, or help them become wealthy or independent, I've directly impacted people's lives and made that difference. And then, God forbid, 1 or 2 or 3 of those companies go on to have millions and millions of users where otherwise I wouldn't exist. I have left that mark. And I don't need the credit for it. I mean, honestly, so that's one of the things where I guess I'm unselfish, is I don't care who gets the credit. In fact, my team's the ones who deserve all the credit for our success as a company, not me. That part of it does drive me, though, is that idea of like, I can leave my imprint in society and leave my mark. And we as people, and we as in technology, and we as in products and our economy are better off because I existed. I mean, when you think of that at that deep layer, it's truly what motivates me to the bone. And there's obviously a lot of little more details. And I ask myself this question all the time, because you need a month. I talked about this recently on another podcast, that you can't have one source of motivation, because sometimes that source of motivation dies down a bit. And if that dies down, you have no other sources, you're going to burn out and you're going to quit, or you're going to be, that's it. So I'm a big believer in having multiple facets of motivation. They say, how do you be successful? Have multiple sources of revenue, multiple sources of income. I also believe you need multiple sources of motivation. You can't have just one factor, right? I mean, like, money's an aspect, right? I mean, I don't define myself as materialistic whatsoever, but, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they look at money as a motivational factor. And somehow in 2016, it's looked upon as like a negative thing to make money. To me, I'm like, what the, pardon my French here, what the hell, right? This is business, not charity. There's no negative in it, right? And you need to have multiple sources of motivation. I think those two that I answered, though, probably are going to be the ones that hit the core to me the most out of anything else.
Yeah, Joshua, that was an awesome answer. I think really what you're saying there is quite a noble cause, really, because obviously you make money out of what you do, but you're helping lots of people, and that's a good thing, isn't it? So, yeah, I totally buy into that. And how do you relax when you're not working in your business?
I wish I had an answer for that one for you, man.
Well, you've got multiple sources of motivation, so you must have multiple ways of relaxing, surely.
I believe sleep is one. No, so all right. Again, twofold. For some reason, the theme of this podcast is twofold. An answer, so it's twofold. This is mentally relaxing, not physically. Yeah. But lifting, going to the gym, cardio, that's a huge stress reliever for me, because I definitely deal with a lot of stresses, and I've learned how to train my thought patterns in order to think ahead. And when you plan long term, you deal with a lot less short term stress and stuff like that. But honestly, working out, and I've only discovered this in the past 24, 26 months, that's a huge stress reliever and a way to mentally shut off, or it's almost like a meditative state, if that kind of makes sense. When you spend an hour, you shut everything off, you're just listening to music, you're focused on yourself. That's a very, very relaxing mental state for me. Now, physically, sleep is honestly probably the biggest one. And another point is sports. I'm a huge sports fan. I think people who follow me on social media are listening. Philadelphia sports team, I live, breathe, and die by them, right? Which a lot of people look at as a waste of time. To me, it's my outlet, right? My enjoyment, my ability to escape reality temporarily. Of course, my teams all fucking suck right now, but that's besides the point. One day it'll be I'll have some enjoyment there, but it's the truth. Sports, and it's also a way how I've bonded with my parents, especially my dad. And probably the last one is, I have a very close-knit family, my girlfriend, a couple of close friends, traveling. So there is relaxing things there. But honestly, I'm a big momentum-driven person. And when things are going good, I'm all about how I can optimize every minute to my advantage. And keep in mind, relaxing to me is interesting. I always try not to burn out, but I love what I do. This is not like a 9-to-5 grind to me. So where people are like, I want some downtime, to me, I'm like, how can I fit in one more call or one more podcast interview or write one more blog post? Because to me, this is living. I feel more alive doing this, and shutting myself off honestly feels counterproductive to what I'm trying to do and what I enjoy. So, again, it's a multifaceted answer here, but it's just the honest truth when you think about it, when you really break it down.
And do you have any entrepreneurial role models?
Yes. Yeah. Indirectly. I have no mentors, but indirectly I do. As I mentioned, I grew up in the Steve Jobs generation. I think listening to him and just watching the way he conducted himself and learning about his life is a very inspirational thing at a younger age. Not so much now. Part of it maybe because he is dead. It's not as relevant anymore. But when you're teenage years during Apple's heyday, even though there's still a ginormous company, right? That's was impressionable. Elon Musk and what he's able to accomplish is an insanity. And there's a few other people. Johnny Earl, who founded a brand called Johnny Cupcakes, is still a direct influence in the way of how he conducts his brand and narrative and storytelling. But honestly, most of the role models I aspire to be today, like work ethic, things like that, aren't necessarily entrepreneurs. Sometimes it can be top, peak performing athletes, musicians, creatives, artists. Yeah. I look for, and kind of why we started our podcast is because we look for signs of what makes the best of the best and whatever they do tick. And I look for that type of stuff and then try to use that as a role model and take that as inspiration to what I do day to day.
That makes sense. I mean, it's just drawing from other people's success, isn't it, I suppose? So it takes dedication to achieve success in many walks of life. It doesn't have to be just entrepreneurialism, does it?
Exactly. And I think the issue here with entrepreneurs is you get tunnel focus. You just look at entrepreneurs as a source. But that's, you're limited your playing field. And oftentimes you can learn a playbook somewhere else and adopt it to whatever you're doing, and you think outside the box. So I'm always looking at every source of a person, industry, whatever the game plan is, and trying to take that into motivation, into my day-to-day game plan. Like you're talking about fitness. I really got into all fitness and what I eat and what I do, increase my energy levels, make me more productive. It's a hack right there. Most entrepreneurs aren't thinking that way. But that playbook, right, that's existed for years in the fitness scene and the bodybuilding scene and the athlete scene and just human DNA. So it's just one of the ways to kind of approach things.
Joshua, can we talk about the time before you were an entrepreneur? And can you tell us what difficulties you had to overcome to get started in your business?
All right. So that's a very good question. I mean, I started my company at 16 years old. Okay. So you're talking about beforehand. It's very hard because before then I was on AOL back in the day, on Yahoo GeoCities making websites. Yeah. I created a fan site to a local theme park when I was a kid that had thousands of users. I sold a website when I was a kid and made money. So the answer is I've always had entrepreneurial tendencies. Yeah. But when I first started as an entrepreneur, the earliest thing is proof of concept, validation. And it's significantly harder because you have a disadvantage of your age when you're trying to sell yourself, present yourself, trying to hustle, then having to deal with school and those type of obstacles and the limitation of being young. But when you get initial traction, I also learned that's an advantage because then you have the narrative of being that, people love the media and stuff, love the boy wonder, the person that's doing it all. And then you can spin into a positive once you get some traction. So I've been on both the receiving and the sending end there when it happens. So, but yeah, that's probably the big, I didn't have many struggles that most of the people I work with experience, where they're becoming an entrepreneur by losing a career or changing career paths or having a family. Or honestly, I know that stresses, and I'm the first person to admit that I put $20 to my name to start my company, which maybe is mind-boggling there. But the honest answer is, what was my risk? I failed at 16 years old. I'm still in high school at the time, and I go the common path that every other person does that society constructed. So, I didn't have much of this risk. I mean, yeah, I dropped out of college, but I did that because I was at the point where college was holding me back from opportunities, and I knew I had enough of an income that I wasn't worried about livelihood at that point. And simultaneously, I had enough connections where, God forbid, shit hits the fan, I know tomorrow I can get a job in a heartbeat. I'd probably be miserable, but that's besides the point, right? Yeah. So I probably, especially the people listening to this podcast, I probably would never have the type of obstacles they would face, and I'm never going to try to even pretend that I deal with the stresses that the people I get to talk to and deal with on the day-to-day do have to deal with. Yeah.
And did you have any doubts that delayed you starting? I mean, obviously you started very young there, but there must have been some doubts somewhere.
So I take this from Casey Neistat, that's probably another role model from a creative field. He's an entrepreneur too now, but the idea of trusting your intuition. I always knew early on, just if I disagreed with something, like I was never like a rebel. I wasn't like the rebellion in Star Wars or anything. But if I trust my intuition over what society told me, I'll do what my intuition would told me. Obviously, there's a moral compass and still, not breaking the law, stuff like that. But like, society is not telling you to go and do your own thing at 16 years old. It's telling you to go in school, study hard, and go to the best college you can and go for that like cogwheel, right? To me, I was like, that's not for me. I love technology. I love building things. I love working with people. That's what I want to do. And I knew early on. And I found, and I was able to understand what, obviously I'm learning every day. Trust me, a 16-year-old me, I would kick my 16-year-old ass if, you put me in the same room as him. But the thing is, I had enough business sense to understand market validation, understand what I was doing. And, that the idea of Ryan Carson's, what he considers naive optimism, I was naive enough to believe I could do something and optimistic enough to believe I can do something. And that's, just took that leap. Didn't even think twice.
Yeah. I think you were round at a time. I mean, when you, by the sounds of it, if you were using AOL and everything, it was quite an exciting time though with the internet, wasn't it? Because I don't think anybody even then had an idea of where it was going to end up.
I think my age at that point is one of the biggest assets I have now because I wasn't necessarily, I wasn't even an adult at that point. I wasn't even really a teenager at that point. So I'm growing up with this technology and I'm like the first true generation to grow up with it. Yeah. And I also have a head start over most people my age because they're still in that social construct of school. A lot of them are going to get jobs. I have a 10, 20-year head start over most people my age, and I'm the one that grew up with it. And I think that's a huge asset that most people don't realize. So, but yeah, I mean, listen, it was some of the most fun times back in the day, man. But honestly, we still live in such great times now. I don't want to even undersell it because I think people are going to look back at this era and be like, holy shit, what we had here was amazing. And it's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And what mistakes did you make that slowed your journey?
I mean, every mistake, man. I think I tell my team all the time, I've made every mistake you can think of. Over-promising, under-delivering, like losing track of time frames, costs, just wasting marketing money. One of my greatest assets is I'm not afraid to take risks. Yeah. But the first second I learn a lesson, I never repeat that same mistake again. And sometimes I'm a big believer in big risk, big reward because that's the only way you grow up. And I don't like that kind of idea of like compound 1-2% growth per year. My goal is, if it's exciting me, 50%, 100%, 200%, 500% growth per year. So I take big risk and I make big decisions future. Like, for example, the podcast, I said I love the podcast format. I truly do believe we're at the stepping stone. Serial's opened the door. And with cars now getting podcast app and on demand when you want it, how you want it, where you want it, growing up with these devices, having these devices where you want it, when you want it, podcast is only going to blow up significantly more over the next 24 to 36 months. And at the same time, I believe the current method, like no offense to you, Neil, but like here, right now where no one else is listening, this will be an outdated method one day. The only people that would record without an audience are people like Serial who are doing like a production style podcast. But if you're talking to interview and things like that, we're already in Blab where we have real people listening in real time what we're talking about, have them a part of the show, contributing to the content we're providing, putting a video-based version of the podcast, the audio-based, putting it on every channel. I'm already thinking ahead where we're going as far as distribution and brand, and you already get podcasts. But at the same point in time, I don't want to just get podcasts. It's the same thing with whatever I do. I want to know where the puck's going to go, not where it is right now. And that's why everything you see what we're doing, we're always looking long-term, planning 2-3 steps ahead of everyone else. So by the time they're like, I get it, we're always saying we already got the market. It's not saturated when we got in. We figured it out, and we're kicking ass now, and you're the ones mirror imaging us. And that's kind of like, that's kind of the mythology of everything that I do.
And what are some of the things that you did before you started your business that would be helpful tips for some of the listeners who haven't yet taken the first step on the entrepreneur way?
One of the things is I just told you I made websites as a kid. And Yahoo, GeoCities, and learned out on my own. And I was running communities and running like at the time was equivalent of having like a team. People who would volunteer and work with you and delegating. At 12, 13 years old, I had 14 people working under me on a website. I was making ad revenue and I had 5,000 active users on a website, like content every day. And I had some of the top SEO for what it is. I owned a 4-letter domain name at the time. That's the best thing is experience. You just got to go in. And I talk to entrepreneurs today, like, what do I need to learn before becoming an entrepreneur? Again, part of my friendship, but fuck it. Go in and make the mistakes now. It's how the best of the best do it. I make mistakes every single day. I know that for a fact. Like, I probably made 20 mistakes on this podcast, but I learn from them. I don't repeat them. And from experience, I grow. And that's the only way as an entrepreneur you're going to do it. There's no playbook. People teaching you how to become a successful entrepreneur one-on-one are, they're fucking liars. If they could be successful, why aren't they the ones doing it, right? If someone can promise they can make $1 million company for you, why aren't they the ones doing it? Why are they teaching it, right? So the honest answer here is, if you're going to become successful and you're going to go the entrepreneurial lifestyle, it's twofold. One, you don't just become an entrepreneur. You know deep down you are an entrepreneur, because if you're not, you're going to be burned out, and this game is going to swallow you alive, because competition is a real thing. And two, you just go in. And part of that kind of goes back to that first answer, because you don't know any way else how to do it. I started at 16 because I didn't know anything else at 16. I still don't know anything else today. I talk about all the time, I've only had one real job. And within a year and a half, I was a busboy at a Red Robin, a burger place. I was the youngest trainer. I could do everything there except bartend because I wasn't old enough. And I was miserable. I quickly grew through the ranks quicker than anyone else because I'm smart and I knew what to do. And I knew how the system worked, and I knew how the business worked, and I knew how to scale, and I hated it. I do something I love. I only know how to do things that are going to be optimizing for me to be productive and to give value to others, and doing an entrepreneurial lifestyle. It's just the way I am programmed and how my DNA is set up.
Mm-hmm. Joshua, what I'd like to do now is just talk about being an entrepreneur and the journey. So can you tell me, do you think culture is important from the beginning in a business?
No, 100%. The culture you set early on is going to be is the tone, the foundation laid moving forward. So there's no doubt about it. If you have a shitty company culture in the beginning, or you hire B or C plus players early on, you set the tone of what your company is going to be. Highest quality, highest expectation, that is what it's all about. So 100% believe in it. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it's something you should orchestrate at the beginning then? Because obviously...
Well, here's the thing. You can't just force culture. Yeah. You force culture and it's not going to stick. Uh-huh. Culture honestly just comes down to the type of people and personalities you hire and the work ethic installed. That's really it. The rest is organic. It just happens. So the honest answer is, you just got to hire the best people possible, and you got to be the type of person to push yourself to the very limit of how you want others to be. And if you do that, the culture is going to set itself. Mm-hmm. If you try to fake it, you try to manipulate it, you hire crappy people, then you're going to have that type of culture because of what you've done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Knowing what you know now, is there anything that if you'd known it when you started out would have helped you to shortcut the learning curve?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I can't stress enough is outsourcing your nightmares. So what I mean by that is, I can't stand HR stuff. I can't stand legal stuff. I can't stand insurance stuff. But they're necessities. They're not evil necessities, because they're not evil. I just can't stand them. I think they take up too much of my time. I'm not an expert on them. If you don't do it right, it can cause the biggest headaches. So I think one of the things early on is just outsourcing what you don't enjoy or you don't want to do. And ultimately, it's going to save you money and save you time because you're focusing more on what you're doing. You have experts handling what you don't enjoy. And when you're focusing on what you do enjoy, you're probably more of an asset. You're going to scale that much quicker. So definitely early on is probably the biggest thing is outsourcing your nightmares, as I like to call it.
Yeah, so when you talk about outsourcing there, you're not talking about outsourcing to some of these lower wage countries, are you? I assume you're talking
No. I mean, outsourcing is like, I have the greatest lawyer in the world. Everything legal related to him. I'm not dealing with it. I have the greatest payroll company in the world. Mm-hmm. I'm not dealing with payroll. They are, right? I have the greatest accountant in the world. I'm not doing accounting. I'm not using TurboTax. I'm using him, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm not talking about outsourcing like pennies on the dollar type situation. I'm talking about just outsourcing it to companies or businesses or people that are just experts and do love what they do, and they give you a reasonable value through the rate and then the proposition they're giving you from it for you to go and do what you do enjoy.
Mm-hmm. And how much does gut feeling influence your decisions in your business?
50-50. 50% gut, 50% what the data tells me. Yeah. So it kind of goes hand in hand, 50-50.
Okay. But there must be some times when you've not got the data, so you have to go with your gut.
Yeah, no, then you trust with intuition. And most of the time my intuition hasn't failed me, and the few times it has, that's where you learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Life is made of constant change, whether we like it or not. And some people say the only constant in life is change. So, Joshua, how do you try to keep up with change?
I'm a big believer in this. If I'm not looking back at myself 1 year ago today and think I was an idiot then, I've wasted my time. And I also believe if I go to bed at night and I feel like I left something in the tank, I've wasted my day. So my big belief when it comes to change everything is you should always be trying to improve yourself and always putting yourself to your limits, whatever you do. And also, another thing, and I learned this from the bodybuilding scene, surprisingly, but it's true. You are today from your previous actions. What you do today is for your future self. And I believe that can apply to business. You know, what you do today, you might not see the results a day from now, but if you keep doing those sums every single day, a year from now, you will see the results. It doesn't matter personal, it doesn't matter physical, it doesn't matter business. It's just how it works. It's basically the cause and effect. But cause and effect doesn't have to be immediate, but it will happen. So I'm just a big believer in those type of mantras. And if you do that, you're always going to be changing. But it's not changing to me. It's more evolving. And that's kind of the way I like to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what is your favorite book on entrepreneurialism, business, personal development, leadership, or motivation? And can you tell us why you have chosen it?
That's a tough one. There's so many great books. I'm going to probably go with the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. It's not a Bible, and you shouldn't approach it as a Bible. And the book isn't about teaching you how to have a 4-hour work week. Listen, I work probably harder than anybody else listening to this podcast. I'm the first one to say it. From the time I open my eyes to the time I go to bed. Yeah. But the book preaches about working smarter, not harder, and working for things that produce results and how to avoid busy work. And basically everything you do has a reason for what it's doing. So if there's any book I can recommend, it's the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Unbelievable book. Again, it's not going to teach you how to work for 4 hours. It will teach you how to do certain things that, again, doesn't apply to me, such as what's called a lifestyle business, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, the principles you learn from it, it's such a great asset, something I always recommend to people.
Mm-hmm. Everyone, when you have a busy life, listening to audiobooks is a great way to expand your knowledge in the time when you may be doing other things, such as driving or when you're at the gym. We have a special offer for you of a free audiobook of your choosing. To choose your free audiobook, go to freeaudiobookoffer.com. As long as you've not already signed up, then you will qualify. Joshua, what I'd like to do now is just speculate a little bit about the future. So can you tell us, what one thing would you do with your business if you knew that you could not fail?
I honestly don't know if I'd change anything. Maybe the only thing is just put more capital in certain projects where you're more risk averse. You need to save some capital in order in case shit hits the fan. But decision making and thought process would probably stay the same in what we're trying to do. So I guess spending more money in certain aspects. If you're not going to fail, you know you're going to get an ROI from it. But that's pretty much it.
Okay. And what skill, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most to double your business?
If I could clone myself, I think that would be an amazing skill to have. No, to answer your question, I sometimes get too much distracted in pointless shit. Someone tweets at me, email, and things like that. And they're necessary evils, and I love it and hate it at the same time. But it's hard when you're in the middle of momentum and you see an email and you're like, I should just respond to that, get out of the way. And next thing you know your thought pattern's broken. So maybe just not being distracted so much as things that which are important, but don't need to be in the now when it comes to that type of stuff. That's probably something I need to still improve upon. That's probably the best answer to give you.
Okay. In 5 years from now, if a well-known business publication was publishing an article on your business after talking to your customers and suppliers, what would you like it to say?
What would I like it to say?
Yeah.
I think it's just a concept going back to the question about legacy. You know, because of ChopDawg, our company exists, or we made that positive impact in society. So something relating to something existing or growing or scaling because our company was there and helped them get to that point. That'd probably be the best answer to give you.
Okay. We're now at the part of the show where you share 3 golden nuggets with us. So what is your favorite quote and how have you applied it?
We're all here to put a ding in the universe. Otherwise, why are we here? By Steve Jobs, something like that. Sort of paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. Still a quote that I remember reading when I was like 14, 15. It always stuck to me. And the idea of we all have the same, well, almost the same amount of time in life. Obviously, some people leave sooner than others, stay longer. But relatively, we all have the same opportunity, right? And how are you going to make every minute count? Because we all have 24 hours in a day. We all have 365 days in a year. But everyone's going to do a certain amount in that time period. And, you know, how am I going to put the biggest dent in the universe while I have this time and opportunity?
Okay. And do you have any favorite online resources that you can share with us?
You mean not my own website, man?
Well, you can talk about that at the end.
Yeah, I mean, we put a lot of great content on there, not going to lie. ChopDawg.com, DAWG. But the real answer is I still find Twitter to be such an amazing social media. I have a little private list that I look at of some of my favorite people and favorite accounts that I use for motivation, knowledge, news.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it right there.
Okay. And what's your best advice to other entrepreneurs?
Just fucking go for it. It's somebody joked with me recently and said I should write a book. Said stop thinking about it and just fucking do it. And said that should be my book title, because that maybe is my unofficial mantra in life, but it's true. People overthink it to the point where they just don't do it. People just waste too much time. At the end of the day, everyone was an amateur when they started, and the answer is they just did it, right? Mm-hmm. They just jumped in, took the leap of faith, trusted themselves, trusted their intellect, and hustled their butts off. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the advice I would give is for those listening who are hesitant. If you keep being hesitant, you're not a real entrepreneur. Sorry to say, but it's true. Mm. Those that are, just say, I'm doing it. I don't know anybody else how not to do it. I'll figure it out as I go along. That's the definition of being an entrepreneur right there. So, that to me is the answer I would tell anyone listening to this podcast.
Okay. Everyone, if you didn't manage to get a note of Joshua's favorite resource or his favorite book, you can find the links on Joshua's show notes page. Just go to theentrepreneurway.com and search for Joshua or Joshua Davidson in the search box. Joshua, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business?
So we always give out free proposals and free consultation for everyone. Though granted, when I say this, I always tell people, if you had a great idea in the shower and you're thinking reaching out to us, we're going to give you a proposal, you have another thing coming. So for those who are serious that have had a great idea and look for a resource, we spend a lot of time without charging people because, again, our job is to help. And anybody in any situation can reach out to us. And the big thing I tell them when they do is always be transparent to us in advance what your goals are, what your financial goals are, your time frame goals, your product. Our objective is to help people. It's not to take advantage. We are a company, but we have a social mission that always comes first. And that's part of what it is. And part of another thing is our ecosystem is about helping others. Only a fraction of % of individuals work with us. Everyone else in our ecosystem, we're giving out content for free for the purpose of just trying to help society. And our blog is a full transparent view on what to do and not to do as an entrepreneur, building a startup, building a company, building something digital, building a brand. Our podcast, we're talking to such amazing individuals and talking about such great subjects. We just talked today with Andrew Brandt, who's a part of ESPN and Sports Illustrated, was the former CFO of the Green Bay Packers and the former general manager of the Barcelona Dragons. Amazing individual. Picked his brain. Next week, we're talking to Wayne Sutton about basically the rights of minorities and how people are still taken advantage of to this day in entrepreneurs and startups and not taken seriously. And how disgraceful that is, but how it needs to be corrected, what he's doing to fix it. Talking about subject matter that people are sometimes uncomfortable talking about and or don't really talk about much. We talked to the founders of MerchWorks and talked about what were their biggest failures, and they are fully open about it. It was very emotional. Things that, again, people need to hear and then they can learn from it. And a lot of times people have this censorship or afraid to talk about these sensitive subjects that to me, it's the only way we as society and as people move forward and become better as people and as entrepreneurs and as creatives. So, and then I guess the last thing is just always being forever curious. Again, why we talk to people from any type of field is because I'm a big believer you can learn from anything. And having tunnel vision is one of the worst things we can do as people, not even as an entrepreneur, but as a person. Mm-hmm. And I'm very open-minded and I'm always changing my own opinion and I'm always trying to learn. And that's something everyone needs to have and a skill set you need to teach yourself.
Mm-hmm. Joshua, you've shared some absolutely awesome information and you've given us some great answers and some great perspectives on being an entrepreneur. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's what I'm here for.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Entrepreneur Way. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter @Neil D. Ball.